Hey everybody, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, the show where everything and anything can and will be sorted. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Reed Brice.
Total paranoia is just total awareness, Michael.
That it is, Reed. That it is. The basic conceit of our show is that we have a guest who is very knowledgeable, an expert, or a huge fan on a subject which we will then be sorting into the various houses of Hogwarts. And today we are joined by Tiffany Katz.
Hello.
Hello.
That's a voice I've never used. Hello. It's like a little bit of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Tiffany is longtime friend, comedian in the Los Angeles area. You're also what is your exact job title over at Studio 71?
Director in brand partnerships.
Right.
You can kill me tonight. No, I do advertising.
Great.
Yeah.
And which kind of ties in to the subject in which we are going to be sorting, which is cults.
Yes. Oh,
So-
it does a little bit.
Yeah, a
it's
little-
propaganda. Yeah.
So Tiffany, what led you into the world of cults?
Since I was a kid, have always been interested in the dichotomy and everything that has to do with cults. I think it started with the fact that I grew up in Topanga Canyon, and that's where the Manson family was known to have. Yeah,
That's a biggie too.
have kind of gained strength is what I'll say. Where Spawn Ranch was. I was only about 4 miles away from there is where I grew up in the hills.
For regulars of the pod, you can get a little more context on the Manson family in a previous episode of The Sorting Hat, the White Album double episode.
Mm-hmm.
We will, of course, go into them more today, but you can get that special connection to the Beatles by hitting that pause button right now and going back and listen to that one.
Yeah.
Thanks for that
That
voice,
was my.
Reed.
I don't know what that was. I'm so sorry.
That was like ASMR to me, though.
that
You
was
could
your-
keep going.
That was your aside voice. Just like, hey, editor's note, everybody, letting you guys know that we've got smooth jazz on the way a little bit later in this
it
hour.
wasn't even. I was gonna say NPR, but it wasn't even that. It was like the easy listening DJ voice.
Yeah.
It's KKJZ.
It's what I wish NPR sounded
We're
like.
gonna get a little bit of Enya here to start off your afternoon.
The
You
trade
can
markets are
say
down. We're looking real in the shitter, and there's marching in the streets. People are upset, and folks are dying. If it was provided to you with such a soothing and calm voice, who could be mad? But back to cults.
Yeah, I've always been into cults. So ever since kind of looking into the Manson family murders, when I was like 13 or 14, did I start collecting from the library documentaries about American cults.
I thought for the briefest period you were going to say I started collecting trading cards
Yeah.
of various
of the
cult
Manson
leaders.
family singers.
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly, like we're in a post-irony age. We know they exist. If
Oh.
not, it's gonna happen now.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Reed, do you have any connection with cults? He said leadingly.
Wow, what if that was Michael's way of trying to like segue that I've been in a cult before? And he was like trying to goad me, like put me on the spot to talk about it. I just also have the same like macabre, like dark, like tasteless fascination with it. There's just something about the mentality of a group all working under the same paranoia and or even delusion
Mhm.
about
Yes.
something. So especially doomsday cults, I'm really into.
Oh, yeah.
Like any of them that are like, we specifically know the finite end of the world date, and it is this one that's coming up within all of our lifetimes. Those are my. That's a chef kiss for the podcast. Yum 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 yum.
I have a more limited knowledge base going into this. I did, when I was in comparative religions in high school, get a brief taste of the Dividians in Waco, Texas.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Other than that, outside of hearing little bits and pieces about Charles Manson
Mhm.
and Jonestown,
Yeah.
obviously, but not more of the nitty gritty, which we will more than likely be getting into. It is also worth noting on this particular podcast, we have 2 Ravenclaws and a Hufflepuff as far as sorting bias might be taken into consideration.
Mhm.
But there are aspects to Tiffany, which both Reed and I were discussing off mic, that might skew both Slytherin a little bit and also Gryffindor.
Yeah.
So as far as any bias might be going on in, those are what we are working with. So
Thanks for that full disclosure.
Yeah.
I feel these are things that people need to know. Tiffany,
Yeah.
where shall we be starting?
Let's start with Children of God.
All right.
Yes, less of a doomsday cult, but just intrinsically interesting.
Okay.
So let's start there. So the Children of God, also known as the Family International, or like Teens for Christ, started in...
I want a t-shirt that says that so much.
Teens for Christ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make that part of our official Sorting Hat merch.
Oh, yeah, which you can buy at www.sortinghatpodcast.com/store.
Put in the promo code.
Uh,
Let's drink the Kool-Aid for 20% off your Teens for Christ t-shirt.
Yep. Man, if only we really did have a store. We're not that legitimate, guys.
Come on, Michael, build it. You have time.
Build the store with your own two hands.
I know.
I want it to be a storefront.
Oh,
not
you
a
want a-
website.
you want a
I don't want
brick and
this to
mortar?
be e-commerce.
No. This is going to be a brick and mortar pop-up store,
Yeah.
like in the
Arts district
arts
downtown.
district. That was
Yeah.
exactly what I was
It's
thinking.
like a kiosk.
Right near Salt and Straw.
Yeah.
And like an egregious
A
amount of
very
homeless
indifferent
people.
teen is who was manning this kiosk.
Okay, so Children of God,
Yeah,
Teens
Children
for
of
Christ.
God started in the late 1960s, so 1968, Huntington Beach, and started with evangelical Christianity, as many of
60s
them do.
The 60s were a good time for cults.
Oh, the 60s were fantastic for cults. I think we hit on that most kind of cult action began in the 60s or early 70s.
Do you think that that was just part of the sort of fracturing that was happening in American culture in general in terms of wanting to start subverting from puritanical Christianity?
Yes, I think it had to do with a sexual revolution. I think it had to do with a political revolution, and definitely in the young people being against their government. We were about to draft for Nam and that sort of thing, and then you had these cult leaders come up, and whether they were religious or not, did they think that they could probably feed off of the disenchantment of the youth?
You know what I just realized? Okay, so this is the 60s, if we're starting here, this time period is when we last saw the greatest fringe movements for the left and the right wing of politics.
Yes.
I'm wondering if maybe, because these last 2 years is probably the biggest upswing in seeing more of people becoming more radicalized to the left and or the right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we're going to see some good cults out of it.
I can't wait.
We did talk a little bit on the fracturing and fringe movements in the Beatles episode, which you guys can watch on the preview or listen to on the previous. But I do feel that there is something perhaps in the form, not necessarily of people cults, but corporate cult sort of led things. And
I completely agree with that.
As so now corporate culture is taken over, and you even see that with Facebook as creating communes that people aren't really leaving, because you can have your laundry done there, and there's exercise areas, and I think it was Walmart that was talking about starting to open up dormitories for employees and things like that. So there's sort of I
just went white in the face.
There's sort of a corporate cult opportunity that might already be bubbling.
There's something so annoying about the idea of a Silicon Valley cult.
I thought that that's where it's going to be for the longest time. It's it's going to be a tech cult. There's going to be the tech side, and then I also believe it's going to be gym culture.
Well, if you
is
think
going
about
to take
it,
over,
if you think
yoga.
about it, a career path in a lot of these industries that are have to do with the internet or tech, they follow a lot of the same systems that cults use. They isolate you from your family and friends. Through just the commodity of time of keeping you in the office all the time. They make you really entrench your entire identity into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And they have control of your finances if they're paying you. And and I don't know if
Well, there's also the
fucking,
potential of blackballing within the tech community.
Oh, especially, and just with these religious cults, women tend to get the short end of the stick. I'm just saying, all of tech culture, all of the tech community, you're a cult. Mark Zuckerberg's going to run for president, and we're all going to become a giant cult of a country when he becomes president.
Now, do you think, jumping back to
Sure.
Children of God, that perhaps also the psychedelic movement with like the new introduction of drugs and spiritual, like a large wave of spirituality was also
completely
okay.
So in the way that we talked about the radical left and the radical right, which I boil down to like the Gore Vidals and the William F. Buckley movements of
I wish that I wish that we even had that half of that intellectualism today.
Yeah.
Of a Buckley or a Vidal.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So we have that, and then you now can introduce commercialized psychedelics. So they were way easier to get than they were in previous decades.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually were being dealt out by an all-knowing person, religious or not, who wanted to kind of let you dissolve into their ideology, using these drugs as a gateway into your spirituality and getting closer to oneself. So
give us a brief rundown about what the MO of this of the Children of God were.
So Children of God, if you were to boil it down, is very much using sexuality to spread Christianity, which is nuts and like super different than other sects of Christianity for sure. And it's this idea of spreading the wealth via your body.
That's
And
wild.
yeah, it's incredibly wild. They used to do this thing, and I love this term, and I wish it weren't associated with this cult because I think it's so cute, and it's flirty fishing. Is what they called their method to get more members.
That is so strange. That sounds like something that would be said by Jane Fonda.
Flirty fishing?
Yeah.
In her new show.
I'm going.
Is it new?
I just meant like 1970s
Oh,
Fonda.
yeah.
Like, I'm gonna go fishing. Flirty fishing. And then like in the next scene, she's like wearing like a fishing getup and she's like winking at somebody in the middle of a river.
I thought of it even an older Jane Fonda, like accusing of being like, "Are you flirty fishing? Is that what the kids are doing?"
No, you're. And then Lily Tomlin, it's catfishing.
Yeah. Like
You've been
Jane Fonda's
catfished.
just a step from center, just incorrect. But yeah, it's flirty fishing, and it's basically religious prostitution. It was like this escort service. So Children of God started with Karen Zerbe and David Berg. And David Berg was more of the, I don't want to use the word evil because I think that's incorrect, but he was the, he perpetuated this sort of thing. He had a darker side to him than Karen Zerbe did, who didn't want to take advantage of the women in this cult. But David Berg was fine with it and said that we needed more members, and how do we get them? And it's that you get, lonely, either divorcees or men who are in what they consider bad marriages or iffy relationships, and you get these beautiful young women who are part of Children of God to bring them into the cult via promising them sexual favors. And that was a big thing with flirty fishing. Sure, right?
Yeah.
Sure, that's a way to do it. That's a great way.
I mean, that's the way now. You just have, it's not a cult, but within like Tinder and all those other dating profiles, it's hey, you've matched with somebody, and then it'll tell you like, come check out this website that is like tinderfuck.com.
Oh my God. I've never
whatever.
had Tinder, so I have no idea. I don't even,
That must be nice.
Oh
Is
my
it?
God.
Or am I incredibly lonely?
No, it's Tinder and OkCupid and all of them. Like, nothing is more upsetting to get a match and be excited only to receive an automated message that's like, oh man, like I thought you were a real person, but you're just a bot who's trying to. It's a great dopamine rush followed by like the drop.
You're building tolerance in rejection though, which is nice because I feel like I don't have that. I'm not numb yet.
Or my heart is growing increasingly dead.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's how I feel. Everyone talks about going on dates and I'm like, what are those? I don't know because I don't have a Tinder.
It's an awful experience.
But yeah,
I love dating.
Yeah.
I kiss all the boys and everyone's my boyfriend.
You're a lucky dude, Reed. A lucky dude. So
flirty fishing.
Flirty fishing, basically going out saying, hey, it's so nice to meet you. By the by, come over to my place and
Exactly.
then we'll have sex.
Yeah, and
then
there are these beautiful women who don't cut their hair wearing linens that should be curtains in the woods. And they take, like, truly, and they kind of bring you in, you have sex with them, and then they tell you about evangelical Christianity and what it's like to be a disciple of Christ.
That is the most bizarre pillow talk I can imagine getting.
I really feel like the conversion rate would be relatively low, or is
You'd
it?
think they had a good margin of success.
I guess these women knew what they were doing.
Yes.
Or these guys were very sad and lonely, or both.
Yeah. When they found out, so another thing was just like this blackmail that kind of happened within the Children of God, which is like,
that's
do you
good.
want to tell your wife about this? Because we can.
Right.
And this type of thing.
Yeah, I suppose if you are targeting specifically people who are in relationships, then there's a lot more pressure that can be put on.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got a cult full of a lot of resentful individuals.
Yes, and here's what takes me to my next point. So once you grab people in using sex as a selling point, do you have a problem? Of course, within like, what is this cult and what do they do? And what ended up happening, and of course this is unfortunate, but a result of this type of fishing people in is we got a lot of rampant sex, we've got a lot of non-consensual sex, and now we have young women, and we're talking under the age of 18, perhaps by miles rather than feet, being expected to have sex with older members of this cult.
Oof.
And this was what was promised to these men by joining, who are also putting money in, who are pumping money into this cult, because we weren't finding like lone men, we were finding financiers and lawyers and med students to join, people with deep pockets to join this cult. And now they are merged into a culture where it's okay to take advantage of women.
That is a super shitty situation.
Way shitty.
Especially because they started on what they believed was a righteous path.
Yes.
And then ultimately got literally screwed.
Yeah. They were fucked.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I curse?
Yes.
Great.
And you have to remember, for context, Michael, it says here by 1972, they had 130 separate communities worldwide. This was not a small operation.
Sorry, repeat that number again.
130
Worldwide.
Yes.
Different communities underneath this
This
network.
umbrella. Yeah.
So this was more of like a sex slave circuit.
Underneath it all, sure.
Yeah.
Over it was just talking about Jesus Christ, the New Testament, regular evangelical Christian ideas, and this idea of pulling in teens and making them into Christians.
And I don't think Christianity is inherently designed to lead to the subjugation and abuse of women, although, because you would just have to take it like in historical context that like women were treated differently at the time that it was written.
Sure.
But there is something to be said about how easily like these fringe religions and even more mainstream accepted religions can use the scripture to subjugate women.
Well, this is just a severe warping of so many things, not only scripture, but also just like the bylines in which you entered the cult, because it suddenly goes from a situation where you're sort of in a position of power theoretically as somebody who is flirty fishing to like absolutely powerless and now needing to serve both the Lord, Jesus Christ, and those who are funding this cult, which that's a hell of a mind fuck.
Yeah.
For like,
It's messy. It's a lot of moving parts.
it is a lot
Literally.
of moving parts.
Yeah.
And a lot of messy moving parts.
Yeah.
And I can't fathom that this machinery wouldn't break down.
It completely broke down, and yet the Children of God are still considered a church with enough members to have a website, to mobilize, to hold events in North America and South America.
Wait, they still exist?
They still exist. So
we're going to talk about it.
do you want to know a fun fact? You know,
this is going to be stressing me out all day.
What's fun is to always name like the well-known members of cults. And this is, do you know the Phoenix Kids? And the answer is yes, you do, if I expand on that.
Yeah, please expand.
So River Phoenix, Walking Phoenix, Rain Phoenix, Summer Phoenix, name any other season and put Phoenix behind it. And those are the Phoenix Kids. Yes. So they were part of the Children of God through their parents, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they did this on their own. Through their parents were they part of the Children of God. It is not specified anywhere. And I've looked pretty deep. And by deep, I mean I Googled it and looked at the first four web pages.
Sure.
So how deep did I go? But I don't think that they were part of any type of sexual abuse within this cult. But that could be minimalizing. I don't know.
That's marginally better.
Yes, I think that they were just evangelical Christians whose parents were lightly associated with the Children of God.
Yeah, and before he died, River Phoenix gave an interview saying they ruin people's lives. So we can't really speculate how deeply involved the river and the river or the river. Sorry, the Phoenix children.
So they might have been
associated.
kind of reformed Children of God followers. As far as
by the time, they would have been in late 70s, all the way to the mid 80s is when they were like kids within it. I think by that time, because it was in 1973 where flirty fishing was no longer being used as often, especially not in the North American sectors of this cult, just because they found out it wasn't working. Not because it's so funny that their statement wasn't because we are taking advantage of the women in this cult. We are creating, cases of sexual abuse and rape and definitely any type of non-consensual sex. But it was because they were like, it's not working as well as we thought.
Are there still instances where these sort of sexual misdeeds are cited?
Yes. I just watched, so oddly, did someone get me to watch I Am Not Your Guru, which is the Tony... What's his name? He's an inspirational speaker.
Oh, Tony Robbins?
Yeah, it was Tony Robbins. What an odd documentary, by the way. I encourage you to dip in. But one person that he grabbed out of the crowd when he's doing this group therapy, this massive group therapy, was a woman from Brazil who was part of the Children of God and kind of audibly wept into a microphone about how her childhood was plagued with being raped and being told that she was doing this to spread Jesus's word. So it's definitely still prevalent. And this woman, I'm guessing late 20s, early 30s. And left the cult, I guess, in her late teens, early 20s, but still was, she was still part of that culture. She was still financially tied to them in that any money that she made was put back into the cult. And she was completely dissolved into it.
Okay. Is there more to the Children of God, or should we start sorting?
We should start sorting. Is there anything?
I would have to say, in order to reach our sorting point, we need to figure out, do we want to be sorting based off of what we think that the congregation truly thought was happening, or do we want to go off of what was motivating the leaders of the cult? I think either or both, because in this one, it's pretty obvious that these leaders knew that the sexuality stuff was self-serving more than actually helping the community.
It's also worth taking into account that as far as cults go, 9 times out of 10, we're probably going to have to assume that there's some degree of crafty, cunning, cleverness going on, which would inherently lend these things to Slytherin. So we need to...
Yeah, keep that bias in mind.
Set that bias a bit aside. So if it is, and also since we are just starting with this one, there's the part of me that is this is egregiously crafty and clever, and I think some of the other cults that we're dealing with are going to be a little less so.
Yeah, they're going to be a little bit.
I think this is straight up, even with all that in mind, this is still way in the baseline of Slytherin stuff. This is literally a vampire movie of women using their sexual wiles to lead men into the forest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what it is for me that makes it seem so over the edge as far as Slytherin goes. There's a part of me that is thinking maybe through like some sort of argumentative systems that they've set in place of like how it's all very like this leads to this leads to this leads to this. You could maybe make the Ravenclaw argument, but it's
There
very
might be other cults that like serve that a little bit better though.
Yeah.
true. So, do you feel comfortable sorting this as a Slytherin, Tiffany?
100%.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's move on
Wonderful.
to
Let's go to Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate. That sounds like it couldn't possibly turn into something awful.
I love Heaven's Gate as an idea.
So do I.
Yeah, I love Heaven's Gate.
I mean, like, that's horrible to say.
No, it's so wacky.
So go ahead and give people a refresher on the Heaven's Gate cult.
All right. So the Heaven's Gate cult, and we're going to say while they had, stuff in the 80s, we're going to say it's basically 90s to late 90s, 1997 being that mass suicide that people have heard of.
The one with the tennis shoes.
Yeah, and then the Nikes, and we were in a mansion in, near San Diego. So Heaven's Gate is a UFO religious group, and they were based in San Diego, started by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. And what's fun about this one is that Heaven's Gate kind of started with this shared delusion between two people. It was almost as if you had kind of a quirky friend who went, well, I believe in aliens. And then the two of you, it got too late at night when you're, when you have that, like, not even pillow talk, but like just weird conversations happen at 2 a.m.
Tired and
It's
you
the
both like
2 a.m. talk.
Yeah, you're tired. There's solidarity in that you're both up this late and stuff. And then there's, and so
I feel like the comedy equivalent is when two people have been like working all night on something and they're so tired that they start this bit that like is making them crack up, like doubled over crying. Both of them thinking it's the funniest fucking thing that either of them have ever said. And then the next day you go and review it and you go, why was that funny at all?
It's nonsensical now.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that to be
in retrospect,
funny.
nothing about that was funny. And in telling what was so funny to a friend, you realize that you're a moron.
But I will also say the comedy community is a cult. Go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree. Oh man, that's a bag of bones.
Yeah.
It's a big bag of bones.
We should talk about it's one of the cults.
Oh, it's
wait,
absolutely
bleep that,
a
Michael.
cult. So
I'm trying to work.
So Heaven's Gate.
Please
So yeah,
bleep that.
Is that real?
yeah. So Heaven's Gate is basically that. It's shared delusion. So it's Bonnie Nettles turning to Marshall Applewhite and basically being like, well, you believe in UFOs. And him saying yes. And then this turning. So imagine your bit at 3 a.m. that you two thought was so funny. Imagine not abandoning it like come morning. Like the sun rises and you're still convinced that that's funny and real. And now you're pulling other people into it to explain to them this bit. And you are convincing people quite compellingly that this is funny. So that's what this is. So it is a doomsday cult. It was, let's go under like what it operated under the belief of, which was that Earth was going to be recycled and the only chance to survive was to leave it immediately, which comes with the comet that was coming, if you guys know of the Hale-Bopp comet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when all of this started. So they had to basically reach an extraterrestrial spacecraft following the comet coming. And this basically got out of hand. So what we also know about Heaven's Gate, and this is my favorite part, is that they had things like matching outfits that they would wear. They always had $5 and a roll of quarters in their pockets, both in death and when they were still like walking around as a cult.
Why?
They said, so this was, I've looked into this, and this is, again, a bit that I don't understand because it was made at 3 a.m. by two crazy people.
It's some crazy-ass inside joke.
It's an inside joke that I don't understand. I've tried to, like, break it down multiple times and gone, like, I'm intelligent and I should be able to find reason within this. The $5 was to, like, pay fines, and the roll of quarters was to make calls. Like in a phone booth.
Yeah, because this is still the phone booth era. This is like just before we get cell phones.
That's kind of like Frank Sinatra in the roll of dimes. Like,
yeah, a little bit. But like, what do either of those things mean when we're operating under the fact that there are aliens? We need to leave the Earth. Mm-hmm. We need to jump on a spacecraft that's coming due to the comet racing across the sky. What on earth? Like, why money just seems like just an extra. It's just funny. Like, why do we need this?
Well, you need to be able to call other people to let them know that now's the time. Presumably,
Yeah,
maybe?
that makes sense. Okay, now here's my favorite thing about this cult.
Yeah.
First of all, they don't believe that the body serves any purpose
Not
except
at
as
all.
a vessel.
Yeah.
To the point, as a vessel to get them from the point of where they are now to the moment when the comet's going to come and cause the next like level of their existence. To the point that when they interact with people, they refer to the human body as the vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay.
What like a dissociative thing. And then second of all, they were technically, they said, against suicide.
Yeah.
But their definition of suicide was rejecting the journey that you were going to go on once the next level started. So like literally they
redefined suicide.
They redefined suicide to just literally be like it's like the Christian equivalent in my head is like dying and then getting to heaven and be like, I'm not going to go. That's their definition of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Bonkers.
So they're looking for a spiritual soul transference when this comet shows up,
Yeah.
presumably.
Basically, I would say that. Yeah. So this is what happened. So let's also operate under the knowledge that Heaven's Gate didn't last that long. Like, how we just talked about Children of God, which now still has like sex of the not sex but sects.
They might have
They
sex,
probably still have
but-
sex. I'm pro sex, but anyway. But when it's consensual and not under the guise of a cult.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to make sure that you were explicit about that.
yeah. That's
Tiffany
my asterisk.
Katz,
Yeah.
anti-rape.
Yeah. But yeah, so they didn't last all that long, and it's because they were leading up to this mass suicide that they had redefined as non-suicide. They rented a mansion. There was no Airbnb back then, so I wish I knew like how they got this mansion. It might have belonged to someone that they knew. I didn't look into that, but it was in Rancho Santa Fe, California, and it was 39 of them. Participated in this. They're wearing black tracksuits and black and white perfect Nikes. They have this little purple cloth over their faces and a plastic bag over their heads, which was to help in the asphyxiation of. They already like drank what we would consider the Kool-Aid.
Right.
Yeah. So they drank a concoction and they put a plastic bag over their head, again as an inside joke, because the concentration of poison in whatever they drank was going to kill them anyway. So I don't
think
understand.
it was one of
were-
a secondary, in case this doesn't kill us and just knocks us out real
let's
good.
asphyxiate this way.
Sure, I think they were trying to, cover their asses on this one.
What's interesting also about Heaven's Gate is that they insisted that no children be involved in both the cult and, of course, the suicide that resulted.
Do you think that was a conscious or maybe just
I-
on level subconscious like understanding
Yeah.
that what they were doing was bullshit?
That's what I think. Now, I don't know. Now, they discussed that it was because the vessels of children, like their body as a vessel, weren't ready to pass on.
That was actually what I was thinking, was
Yeah.
maybe it's just a
You're not ready.
developmental thing.
Yeah.
But
But then it also means that they're doing this, they're doing this huge suicide in conjunction with the comet Hale-Bopp, and they thought that by leaving Earth, because the Earth is going to be recycled, that no children were allowed, I suppose, to be part of this new world that they're creating in space dust, which is also crazy. So it's either they're protecting, it was one of two reasons. One, either their philosophy is a little flawed and that they're not, that kids will never be part of what New Earth will be.
sure.
Then, or secondly, they had a inkling that this bit gone awry at 3 a.m. about UFOs shouldn't involve the innocence of kids, and we shouldn't kill them in case we are wrong.
There was a weird part of them that was like branding and marketing was just
Yeah.
like, from an image standpoint, this is going to look real bad if they're
If
kids.
they're children. Also, maybe they were like, maybe Nikes don't come in a lot of kid sizes. I don't. Maybe the tracksuits didn't fit smaller bodies.
So that's a
the
really
reason.
that's a
Like,
really
well,
interesting.
yeah, well, I
If
couldn't
they,
find
if they
any.
can't fit
yeah.
the aesthetic, let's just
Yeah.
not have them do
But
it.
that's why I love Heaven's Gate is the matched aesthetic. I kind of love that.
Yeah,
It's
they were
very-
squad goals for sure.
It's very bizarre that they would put so little emphasis on the body, referencing it as a vehicle,
Yeah.
and yet try to unify what everybody was wearing upon their ascension.
Yes.
It seems
They were, yeah.
It's very wild.
It's very wild.
And
Well,
also,
if you think about it, it actually makes perfect sense but it makes like a dorky kind of sense. If nobody's special, that really just helps you just focus on what you're doing. It's the same like, if you wear like a uniform to your school.
Yeah.
You're just making sure that nothing's a distraction.
They also were partially genderless, which I like. So they were wearing gender neutral clothing. So because they believed if you are this vehicle, this vessel, then gender does not matter.
Sure.
Yeah, it doesn't matter a woman or a male.
I don't recall there being any weird sexual shenanigans in this one, right?
No,
or,
not really. I can't recall. If that was that, then that's that would be like an offshoot.
Yeah,
that wouldn't be part of the philosophy
tends to
of this.
skew really heavily into cult phenomenon behavior or like just the perversion of like gender and or sexuality. But this one's pretty benign. Like honestly, another thing about this was a cult that came of age and like had its big like conclusion in the early days of the internet. So,
it was techie.
They had a website that you can I think is still up.
It's still up. You can email it. I've done it. You can email the Heaven's Gate. Of course I've emailed the Heaven's Gate people.
And is on the website, is that where the video is? The video that the leader recorded, like kind of talking through what's on, like what their whole deal is?
I believe you can find, and I might be wrong, they might have, because it's so funny to think that someone's editing this website in real time.
Oh yeah.
But there used to be 2 videos you could find. You could find this like 45-minute intro as to why we are going to commit this suicide that's not a suicide. And then secondly, you could find the video from the man that went to the mansion at Rancho Santa Fe. They didn't end up participating because he was filming all of it. So he was the documentary filmmaker. Yeah, and like he left before he eventually I was like questioned by the police, but only gave up that video and all the information 5 years later. So it was 5 years of the cops and detectives being like, what happened here?
Was he not convicted of like any form of assisted manslaughter or anything like that?
I don't
or
believe
assisted
so.
suicide?
I think it was like voyeurism. Like I don't.
Maybe he couldn't realize like that they were going to be serious about what they were doing, because like honestly, who in their like you would think like oh, this is just a weird group and they're just going to keep trucking along on their weird comet thing.
Yeah, he was instructed just to take footage. I don't know how much he knew of it. He wasn't in uniform or anything, but he was just instructed to like audio video.
That's
wild. He was the AV club.
And also, this is probably a Hufflepuff.
Oh, are you kidding me? This is the most Hufflepuff one.
This is such a Hufflepuff
I
move.
think that's why I'm the most endeared to this one. It's so fucked up to be endeared to a mass suicide. I can admit that.
No, I love this. I'll say I emailed them, and
what
I started
did you
out.
say?
I started out in all caps with "sorry." I didn't know first because I didn't know how to start the email, but secondly because I was like, "How many of you are there left?" And I'm very sorry if there aren't. You get both an automated response. I suggest anyone do this. I suggest anyone who has 5 minutes right now go to the Heaven's Gate website, email them to know that you care. And that you realize their efforts into what they were doing. You get an automated response saying that they are no longer like taking submissions into the cult. And then I think like months later, did I get a real human being who emailed me saying like there's no need to apologize and you could go to this video for more information. So it's still kind of automated.
So wait, are there still members of this cult? Are they still functioning?
The domain name is still being paid for annually, is what I'll say. I don't know how functioning they are in philosophy.
Tiffany, we have to get to the bottom of this.
I know. I'll be part of it. The problem is if I don't have a Tinder. I don't have much going on. I'm willing to just be part of the Heaven's Gate cult.
Wait, no, I don't want you to join. I was going to say
I'm not going to kill myself. I'm just saying, like, put me in this bit. I'll believe in the UFO. Tell me about the comets. Let me wear the tracksuit. So you can just go see what you want more inside information.
Yeah, what is the next cult on the docket?
Yeah. Before I decide to completely join.
I don't want this slippery slope to be happening on our podcast.
Yes.
A month later, we find out Tiffany's buying Nikes. We have to get real concerned.
Yeah. I'm just brand loyal. Let's be honest.
They are very comfortable.
All right, so that's a Hufflepuff. What's the next
Let's go. And I know that you we had discussed that this the music culture of this cult, and that'd be the Manson family. This is how I started.
Helter Skelter, baby.
This is the Mansons are such an interesting cult.
Yes.
And
interesting.
because they started with a love for, 60s lo-fi. Like, just, we love pop music, we love lyrics.
It was a casual California hippie cult, y'all, that ended up being one of the most profiled murder sprees in American history.
It was this quasi commune. We're in California. It's the late 60s. It's exactly that like summer of love, sexual revolution. There's a lot of politics involved, of course, with what Charles Manson thought was going to happen in America. And then we've got a bunch of young runaways as women who are going to be taken advantage of, mentally, physically, everything.
All entrenched in this very permeating, very fracturing part of the civil rights movement, and like white European white people, young people suddenly feeling like this loss of identity.
Mm-hmm.
And also feeling like this tension of not knowing what's going to happen to their communities because people of color had finally started speaking up about the injustices that they were experiencing. And it's such a strange, it's really strange to just like think about how when people are like, I deserve to be treated equally, the people who have up until that point been in a position of having more power, even though they don't know or can't utilize it, feel like, oh, I'm going to lose power. Instead of like just say, oh, no, actually, you're just going to have the same amount of power that I do.
Exactly.
In this regard.
Because this is a white supremacist cult.
Yeah, pretty much.
But Tiffany or Reed, how is it that Charles Manson sort of had a rise to being the cult leader within this group?
So this is interesting. So I don't know. Okay, so Charles Manson had gotten out of jail, pretty much, and then and that was like a large for multiple crimes, for drug crimes, for destruction of property, for a bunch of things.
And this is like starting in his teens, so he's already had to learn how to just like deal with every human interaction as a high stakes sort of thing.
Yeah. So, but it started really with music. It started with the fact that he was a musician. He was in
the LA music scene.
Yeah, big in
heavily.
the LA music scene. He learned to play guitar and drums. He became friends with Dennis Wilson. He was introduced to Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys and would hang out at Dennis Wilson's house.
This is the most wild shit, you guys. Okay, so it's all started with Charles Manson just being that guy who would come into your house and not leave.
Yeah.
He would, and like, but in the 60s, everybody wanted to be cool, man.
Yeah.
So what happened was Dennis Wilson met Manson at another party where Manson just has this sort of like magnetic personality.
Well, I know also from a little bit of like indirect research that Manson had read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, and he said it was one of the only things he ever really got out of another person was that philosophy.
And if you get a chance to read it, it is like pretty bizarre.
It's how to manipulate people.
It's how to manipulate
how to become
people.
a complete sociopath in like under 5 days.
It's crazy because it was written, I believe, in like the 1920s or something.
Something like that.
And it's wild just on the fact, like, there are these little psychological tricks in it. Like, if you get somebody to say yes 2 times, the 3rd time, they'll be less likely to say no.
Right. Yeah.
Just little things like that. And some of the information there is, like, wildly out of date. But
yeah, it's really antiquated.
Incredibly so. But you can definitely see how something like that, when taken especially outside of the realm of business, which this was predominantly written for, could be used for very devious means.
Yeah. And Charles Manson, so with all of that said, the thing that Charles Manson had, he did not have talent, in my opinion. He didn't even have good looks, people often have remarked that, like, you could smell Manson before you saw him.
Mhm.
He did not bathe. He ate out of the garbage.
Yeah.
But what he had was the ability to know what other people wanted, to very quickly read
Ooh.
you, know what you wanted, and then try to tell you, I'm going to give you what you want, but it was an illusion and he was actually just furthering his own agenda. And he did it with everyone. He did it with women who were vulnerable. That's how he got new members. He did it with people who had resources he wanted, like Dennis Wilson in his house and his music connections.
Yeah.
He even did it when they moved over to the Spawn Ranch by telling the man who worked there,
George Spahn,
yeah, we're going to give you a bunch of free labor just in exchange for having a place to live.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I'm going to give you a girlfriend who will live with you in the house and have sex with you whenever you want.
Yeah. Squeaky Fromy, everyone.
Yeah.
Just like a young teen who had to sleep with George Spahn so that they could stay there for free.
Yeah. He literally, it was, for the most part, I believe it was like a female majority cult, right?
Yes,
there were
absolutely.
There were a few men. And
the men would come and go. The women were there.
Yeah.
The women were canon in the cult.
And that was his whole thing. Like you said, he was like, I know the way to like trick people, and I'm going to do it this way because I have a gift that nobody else has, and I need to become famous. That was his overall arching goal. Was he wanted to live in infamy.
Yeah,
and he was going to do anything he could to get it.
Absolutely. So like, yeah, so there's Spawn Ranch. So this guy that comes over who smells bad, who isn't even that attractive, nor is he very talented, but could play guitar and is incredibly manipulative. With such conviction does he say most things. Goes from talking about the Beach Boys and the White Album, so the Beatles' White Album with the song Helter Skelter on it. And think again that it's like late at night, you're vulnerable as a young woman, and you're hearing this guy talk about music, which is something you're already interested in. It's the 60s, it's California. And he goes from talking about the regular lyrics of Beatles songs to how they all lead up to this like apocalyptic war that's going to arise from racial tensions between black people and white people. And like, and to Charles Manson, that seemed like a fluid transition.
Right.
And these young women completely believed him, that these lyrics in the White Album were leading towards this like end where Satan and God will reunite and judge humanity.
Yeah, and then the black race will rise up and kill all of the white people. That's why they like thought we need to go into hiding, because they thought that the black community was going to literally genocide every white person on the face of the earth.
And I don't know, and the other elements of it, which I don't know were if they were intentional or they were just like holes in Charlie Manson's weird I went to jail brain, which is that he also borrowed things. He borrowed a lot of like doomsday stuff from Revelations and from Scientology of all things that was beginning to rise. Mm-hmm. So all of the apocalyptic stuff came from there as well, just fragments of it, which is strange and interesting. And these women were on board. That's the crazy part of it. Yeah.
Well, but we have to take into consideration a large part of how he got people to stay submissive.
Yeah,
is he constantly drugged them.
This is true too.
He would do.
That's like
yes.
You buried the lead on that one.
Yeah, no,
sorry. No. What if it? Yeah, I was gonna do a big tap dance for that one. He drugged him.
Yeah,
he absolutely drugged him.
Yeah, when you like, there was a dude who I forget what his name was, but he talked about his experiences going to the ranch after they had already moved there and started squatting there. And Manson would give, I think they were called sermons, and you were expected to take drugs and just keep retaking them for up to 12 to 16 hours while he would just rant at you. And you were also expected to like go through all these exercises.
Yeah, David Koresh did a similar thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, where it would just be fatigue and prolonged sermons that would wear you down until left is right and right is left. Mm-hmm. And I guess the black race is rising up because nothing makes sense anymore.
Exactly.
It's very crazy because I've heard little bits and pieces about a lot of Charles Manson, but it's finally coming together and coalescing a little bit that he was very good at playing the hits from all these other things and then uniting them in very unique ways that made you suddenly go, oh, I like the Beatles, and now we're at Revelations, which is another like large sort of popular thing within the Christian community. I mean,
He found meaning in the meaningless. He was finding crazy meaning in lyrics written by Paul McCartney and John Lennon that were just at times fun. So you guys did a great episode with Derek Heath, a fine friend of the White Album, and so many of those songs were not deep politically or socially or anything in that sense. And he's just grabbing meaning and giving it to you. And when you are drugged and you don't have a home and you are this woman who's young and being forced to sleep with people, just everything. And then a record is playing. Think of that. He would constantly play the White Album on a loop. And it was just, I mean, you're hypnotized by it. It was hypnosis.
What I think we have to also keep in mind is that Charles Manson was definitely just shooting from the hip on everything. And I think this is what culminated in the murders. This was not carefully planned. In a way that a lot of these organized cults are. It was just like, you could just tell that he was just like, from day to day, didn't know what was going to happen. And the murders happened themselves, not because of some great prophecy that he had, but just because his music career wasn't getting off the ground. That's how all of the really gruesome things happened. Was he felt slighted by a music producer, got angry enough in the moment, and sent people out to murder in his name.
Oh my God.
So his large long-term goal was really undefined.
Yeah.
Outside of knowing that he was fearful of Black culture, presumably erasing the white race. And other than that,
we can't even be sure if he even really
believed that. Yeah.
Like, he was probably your garden variety white supremacist, but who even, like, he is so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Because he's mentally ill.
Yeah.
That we can't get a good grasp on what he actually believes.
Yeah.
And what he's trying to tell the people, again, to manipulate them.
Mm-hmm. Nor did he commit those murders at all. Like, he was not there for the Sharon Tate or LaBianca murders. Those were like instructions, apparently, that Manson gave to these women.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they were able to get the nerve up to even do this, because you would say, like, how could people, even people who've been on drugs, just go into somebody's house and murder? Because he just told them, go to this house, kill everyone who's inside of it. And it happened to be the wrong people.
Feel no remorse.
Yeah. It wasn't the people that he intended to be murdered. The way that he got them ready to do it was through a series of exercises that he had them do that also incidentally helped them survive. He would have them break into people's houses. Initially, they wouldn't steal anything. He just wanted to play pranks on the bourgeoisie. They were also an anti-capitalist cult, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Which is...
They were communists.
That's the one good part. I'm in.
But, at the time, there was a very much like an anti-capitalist, anti-commercialism streak through youth culture in general. He would have them break into their houses, rearrange things, or just change things in the house slightly just to fuck with rich people.
Mm-hmm.
And it slowly culminated to like, oh, wait, we could just take things. We can just steal things to make money and get more drugs. That's why when it got to the point that he was like, go to that house, kill who's ever in there, they were already used to like performing these these other criminal acts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That up until that point were pretty benign.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was very disorganized but just in weird ways.
Yeah. And definitely under the weird, because he didn't do these things himself. He didn't physically go into these houses. He instructed others to. For the want to become a famous musician. That is what he has still said in some in interviews decades later. Has he said he wanted his music career to take off, which is the commentary that the musical Assassins gives to John Wilkes Booth killing Lincoln because for bad reviews, because of bad acting reviews.
Did you know that Lincoln actually saved one of Booth's relatives from an accident like years before this happened, before his assassination?
And Booth knew this?
No.
Oh man.
It's I believe it was Abraham Lincoln saved Booth's son, or
like a brother or something. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact thing, but yeah, there was actually a weird connection that like Lincoln actually like had helped. It was like a net benefit to Booth.
I actually think it might not have been Abraham Lincoln. It might have been like his brother, his son might have helped.
Okay, but yeah, there was
Booth.
some
But like
connection.
there's a direct connection
Yeah.
where a Lincoln saved a Booth.
Yeah.
But let's
and-
save this for the Abe Lincoln
saved
episode.
a Booth.
Oh, we should do Assassins.
I love Assassins. What a great Sondheim musical.
But those are people, Reed. Those are people. We can't sort people. We can
We
sort
would
the
sort
assassin.
ideas.
The
Yeah.
assassination itself.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, the Manson family. I suggest anyone who is in the LA area or comes to the LA area and would want to see a pretty interesting museum to go to the Museum of Death on Hollywood Boulevard, and they have a great room that's dedicated to the Manson murders and the philosophies of Charles Manson.
And if you're extra fucked up, you can also go to El Coyote. I believe it was the last place Sharon Tate ever ate before she was killed.
Oh man. If you're super, super fucked up and you're in the Simi Valley region, Simi Valley / Topanga Canyon, the Manson Cave is there. I've gone to the Manson Cave and sat under it.
What was it
Fun.
like? Have they
Yeah.
kind of like preserved it in
No.
any way?
It is there's no preservation needed, and that it truly is just across from the church at Rocky Point or the church at Rocky Peak. It's one of the two, and it's just a cave. It's like if you were hiking around and you just saw a cave that gives you a little bit of shade, and then there's a large rock in front of it that used to have the Manson family carved into it that no longer does, which is either time or someone replaced the rock out of respect to the horrific things that Charlie Manson did.
So I think this definitely, we have to like go into this knowing when we sort that this is all about Charlie.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like, you know, even though he didn't do any of the murders themselves, a lot of like the people like after they went to jail for it were like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was
Yeah.
so fucked up on drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
So this isn't a Hufflepuff
Nope.
in
Not
any
at all.
sense.
And
Not
I would
at
say it's
all.
also not a Ravenclaw because it doesn't like they were not like methodical about anything.
No, there was no structure to this, no intellect
They were so
behind it.
stupid that when they did the murders, they're like, what do we do? What do we do? Let's pretend that black people did this. So what would black people say when they vandalize? So that's why they wrote like pig. Or is it pig or piggy that they wrote on the wall?
Piggy. Yeah.
Yeah, they wrote that because they wanted to make it seem like these were the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
Like Charles Manson barely knew any black people, let alone members of the Black Panthers.
Now, okay, so from a bumbling standpoint,
Yeah.
that actually could kind of be Hufflepuff, but they're not as far as like overall actions, just because Hufflepuff is far too complacent, I feel, as far as like there's the weird part of me that almost thinks you could make a Gryffindor argument as far as just like the anti-capitalist agenda
Yeah.
and the sort of lack of looking at all of the surroundings and just going in and sort of wrecking shop. But at the
Mhm.
same time, we have to remember that the guy at the back of it is just trying to become a good musician. So
To
it's
get
probably
famous, yeah.
Slytherin.
I think his followers were Hufflepuffs and Manson is a Slytherin.
Yes. But then what does that make the overall cult?
The overall family, I probably think, is going to ultimately skew Slytherin.
I'm going to say Slytherin. I
Okay.
agree with that because it's all the philosophies of Manson.
Sure. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't, getting too...
No,
Yeah.
thank you. No, you're going to demand definitive answers from me, and I'm going to give them to you.
Thank you, Reed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, who do we have next? What do we have next?
Let's do the People's Temple. Let's go to Jonestown.
Great.
Let's take a plane ride to Indiana.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
This is the one that, like,
I'm so fascinated by People's Temple. This is the one, right?
Yeah,
well, I mean,
this is the biggie.
This is where drinking the Kool-Aid
Absolutely.
comes from.
This
We
is where
just-
Which
so
is-
many
By the
things
way,
come from.
It's
It's
not
great
accurate.
Flavor Aid.
It's Flavor Aid. You're right. You're
Purple
completely right.
Flavor Aid.
So let's go to Indianapolis, Indiana, 1955 right now. Imagine what it looks like. And let's do a utopian cult for social change grounded in both Christianity and like socialist and communist politics and this and the search for racial equality. So great to start out with. Fantastic.
Core, seems solid.
Yeah.
Sign
What
me
a
up, baby.
We've got
noble effort.
communism. We've got Christianity. We've got racial equality. We have 3 things that I love that are happening here.
And things that presumably are not going to be in harmony most of the time.
Yeah.
But we've somehow found a way to remove the people aspect that is going to corrupt any of those things.
Absolutely.
Presumably.
So we start with Jim Jones himself. He's a communist, and he's angry at the harassment of communists in the U.S. in the mid-50s
Sure,
and early 60s.
anger, always a good place
Absolutely.
to start.
He's just, well, it's anger, and it's also just, when you boil down communist philosophy, him going like, why are people angry at this? And it's because it served America economically for the 1% at the time, and for the government and everyone to be the slaves to capitalism. That's exactly what it was. That the people would operate better under communism, and yet the government wouldn't let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we, of course, get into the Red Scare, which I won't really dip into that much. But you have to remember that a lot of lies are happening and a lot of witch hunts are going on. So Methodists helped him, of all things. Methodists that he didn't like meet via the Communist Party, just other Methodists kind of helped him develop a church. And he needed a religion, he believed, to further these social goals and to get members. I think it was difficult. He found that it was very difficult just under communism to find people in the Midwest willing to join this cult.
Yeah,
It still
communism
is.
wasn't like the thing that you could just bring up at a party.
Yeah, absolutely
it
not.
still really isn't in a lot of areas.
Definitely not in Indianapolis, Indiana in the 50s. And probably not in a lot of the Midwest still. Do they still have this negative connotation with
no,
it?
for sure. Like I have friends in the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of
same.
America.
Yeah.
In chapters outside of
LA.
out of the coasts, and it's tough to like, because I do have people who are full-fledged communists,
Yeah.
but I also have friends who are just socialists, and a lot of people don't think or don't know that there's any difference. It's like any grade of red is difficult.
Yeah, when you get those shades of red, a little bit of pink maybe, but yeah, which is interesting and goes into a lot of political theory that I'll stay away from. But anyway, so the People's Temple asked people also wonderfully to do things like attend in regular clothes and be inclusive of the poor and provide shelter to the disenfranchised and to the have-nots of the world. Again, beautiful, humanitarian,
sounded
wonderful.
good.
Yeah,
Hell yeah,
communism,
sign
great.
us up, baby.
Yeah, and Jones himself, because of these efforts, was appointed to the Indianapolis Human Rights Commission. Everything is going right.
Right now, this is sounding Gryffindor is all get
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
He even would consult with Father Divine, who was the head of the International Peace Division movement. Jones visited him many times to kind of discuss, like, how do I keep this following? How do I grow this following? And how do I become a leader while still letting people get involved in the politics of this? Great. Right?
Yeah.
We're all good. And then comes, how do we keep people in a cult? And that's when it gets interesting. So we were discussing earlier this way to make sure that they don't have other means of communication or other places to go. So Jones started telling people in this cult that they should kind of leave their blood families, as he called them, so their kin, their any familial piety that they had, and asked that they wholly devote themselves to the social movement of Jonestown in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
That anyone else who didn't agree with them religiously or politically kind of wasn't worth their time. If they weren't going to join, then these aren't the people you want to surround yourself with.
Which is an extreme step.
Super
it's
extreme.
but you can still kind of track why that would be, because like they are taking a big departure from everything that American standards
Understood.
or
yes.
what Americans stand for at this point.
Yeah. And then he needed to relocate the church and spread it in multiple places. Because again, it was getting difficult to try to get people to the Midwest, to get people to Indiana to join the utopian society that Jonestown would be. So he started creating chapters in places that had more people of color, because he believed racial equality was like a big part of this.
And that sometimes only on paper, but for the most part, the American Socialist and Communist movement has been very, very supportive of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Just contextually.
Exactly. So he put members in Redwood Valley in California and in Los Angeles. They took in, within just a couple of weeks in the Redwood Valley, they got 140 members, half of which were Black. So great. So they're trying to do that. And we still don't know whether that was, so this idea to grow the movement by using people of color We don't know whether that was a little selfish in a lot of ways.
I suspect
They
that
were
it probably
mandated.
was.
People were mandated from Jonestown to leave Indiana to go to these people, to go to these places that had people of color and just to grab them in and tell them exactly what this is about in so few words and tell them to become fighters in this movement.
I'm sure in their mind they rationalized it as something noble.
Yeah.
But you have to imagine like that there were so many people at this time who were just fighting like such a big wall of resistance from the federal level, from their own communities, to have people come and say, we all think that you are completely 100% equal to us. We're going to give you a life that you can't even imagine in your own circumstances. All you have to do is abandon everything that you know. That has to be very tempting to anybody of a marginalized identity, whether it be gender or race.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is all happening, and the People's Temple was growing rapidly over 15 to 20 years. At its peak, they say that it had 20,000 members. I think it's more like 5,000 are what researchers have now decided to boil it down to. But then comes this like need to completely relocate in general to out of America where they could do their own thing. I think that a big part of it was how much can we do here? How much noise can we make in America without getting in trouble? And it turns out not a lot. Not a lot. You were going to be punished. So Jones, for whatever reason, wanted to go to South America. He looked at places in Brazil and Rio de Janeiro and then kind of settled on Guyana. Is that how I pronounce it, by the way?
I don't know, but you said it in a very Vice documentary way, so I think we're going to just go with
it. Here we go. And Guyana is where he started the People's Temple agricultural project. And there were two reasons why he chose Guyana to be the place where the People's Temple would be. One, because it had a socialist government to begin with, so there was no resistance there and they could gather more members.
Helpful.
Just by proxy. And then it was also, majority English speaking. So there was no language barrier there.
Right. But you would still, if you went there, be completely removed from your own culture.
So people asked Jones, why are we relocating? And he could have said for those two reasons, but also came up with this wonderful lore that he had a vision in the night that Chicago would go under nuclear attack, would be coming under nuclear attack, and because of that would destroy Indianapolis. So we need to get the hell out of Indiana, is what he said.
So fear-mongering was the route he went, rather than any of the viable, perceptibly logical ones.
Yeah. Now, did he really have this vision? Who is to say? I have no idea.
Was he just continuing to play on the Red Scare and Cold War that we were ultimately leading up to in the rest of the country? Probably.
But we got out of Indiana because he said that they were going to be, Chicago's going to be under nuclear attack. It's going to be destroyed along with Indianapolis. We're going to go to South America. And then here comes the largest mass suicide of 918 people, including about 276 kids. And I believe it was the greatest single loss of American civilians in like a deliberate act since 9/11.
I believe so too.
Until 9/11. Yeah. So this is where it gets pretty insane.
I don't recommend this, but this is a unique case in which the entire mass suicide was recorded.
Wait, really?
Was it Jones who insisted on having a lot of things documented, or did somebody just happen to be recording?
I think he wanted to document it. I don't remember whether there was a discussion or if there's there is a discussion anywhere.
Yeah, I don't
of either. A mandate to record. I don't know. But
there is an audio recording of them telling they had been doing drills with their followers leading up to it, but there is a recording of them treating it just like any other drill in the beginning, and you can hear everything that's happening.
So back up. Sorry.
Yeah.
How did we get
to this place?
Yes, because I feel like we just made a pretty substantial leap from. I mean, it's a substantial leap of hey, we're going to South America.
Yeah.
But was suicide ever being discussed?
Not until the fall of 1978.
Okay.
The autumn of 1978 did suicide get discussed.
What was the catalyst for that?
There are so many differing thing. So it's like incredibly odd. What it comes down to is like a statement, is what I would say. I don't know if Reed agrees if you've looked into it. It comes with like this massive statement. And it also comes with the assassination of a congressman, by the way, of Congressman Leo Ryan, who was there. Like,
because he went there to just check things out.
Yeah.
And at that point, a lot of people expressed the desire, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I do remember learning about that in history class.
This was a mass hysteria. They said about 120 members were probably actually incredibly for the statement of this mass suicide in the name of the People's Temple, in the name of social change and communism and Christianity.
And then the rest
So-
of them
the rest were just horrified.
the rest
So-
were trapped there.
Yeah, they
The
were trapped.
Suicide was a form of protest.
Nearly.
It wasn't even.
It was also a form of delusion from what Jim Jones thought was going to happen to America
'Cause
in
didn't
this
he-
nuclear attack.
Wasn't there also the intimation that he suggested that if the congressman left, that they would he would bring the government back and they would all be murdered?
Something
Or-
like that.
Yeah, it was something,
yeah.
or like that they would be, or that they would just be like that they would be dissolved.
There
as a-
seem to be several logical fallacies that are in play there that
Yeah.
I feel like obviously at this point when you're in a cult, I can't necessarily say that you're in a rational state of mind, but
Yeah.
it seems that at least some were. But you just go, okay, you've said that if this guy leaves, we're going to be shut down or murdered.
yeah.
At the point that they show up, that's when we discuss suicide, I think, if that's even where we are. But that still seems like an extreme. Again, we're talking about cults.
It
I
was
should
crazy.
have seen this coming.
We went from a utopia in some sense, or at least the want for a utopian society, into let's all kill ourselves in South America.
And it escalated really quickly. So we're on November 17th. That's when
Yeah,
the
the day
congressman
before.
got
Yeah.
there. He gets there, is checking things out, quickly realizes that the good face that everyone's putting on is not what's happening. A bunch of people are like, help me get the fuck out of here.
Sure.
The next day, November 18th in the afternoon, as they are getting onto the airfield, Jones had them followed, and then they were fired upon with guns.
Mhm. Open fire.
There's actually even apparently, I haven't seen it, but apparently there's even a little bit of video from one of the journalists who were accompanying him who got murdered. It's fucking bonkers.
So were there known guns on the premise of Jonestown? Like, was it an armed base or?
In South America, did they have weapons? Yes, and they were for protection. They weren't killing each other yet.
Yeah,
there's no evidence of like we were turning fire on each
And
other.
like even like outside of like this sort of cult context, a lot of things that a lot of people don't realize about the far left wing is they are not necessarily anti-violence.
Not at all anti-violence. Do they?
They are
believe
very
in?
much.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who have the school of thought that revolution only comes through acts of
Completely. Yeah.
of like a physical pushback against your oppressors.
Yeah.
So yeah, for that reason, they probably already had them for protection and just for whatever would happen.
And so then the snowballing happened of we killed this person, everything needs to step up, we have to kill ourselves.
It happened very quickly.
So quickly.
The same day.
Yeah.
That happened.
Now, and you could say, was it completely like pre-planned? And to that, we don't know how planned it was, but there was enough of this like cyanide and grape flavor aid concoction to kill 918 people.
Yeah, and like I said,
So
they had been running drills too. They like made people do it the same way that your school or workplace would make you do a fire drill.
Yeah.
Running drills of drinking flavor aid.
Of just being like, there might come a time that we have to do this. So
Everyone get in one place, everyone sit on the ground, everyone do this and lay down.
Yeah, they had, and that's why, even though there was pushback, even though there were people resisting it, that's why when you listen to it, there's not a lot of people arguing. It just starts happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've transitioned.
And it's fucked up. I won't give a whole lot more because I don't really want to it gets a little bit torture pornish of me, and I don't like doing it. One thing to say is he made the parents do it to their children first, to give them to them first.
Yeah. You know, like when you're on a plane and you have to.
Because
On a
No,
plane.
it's the reverse
you
on a
put your
plane.
mask. Whoops.
You put your mask on first, and then you're supposed to assist your
and
children.
the reason why is he must have known if they murdered their children, there's no way they wouldn't have gone through with killing themselves too.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yeah.
that's rough.
So that's, I think, important to know that I think there was a little bit more of a lucid understanding of what he was doing to people at the end.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, I agree with that.
I would say Jim Jones himself transitioned from a Gryffindor to a Slytherin.
Yeah.
That said, I don't necessarily think that the cult itself might have transitioned.
I think
there's a lot of selflessness to this cult.
no,
Like,
I think this is one of those the best intentions sort of going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that this might be a Gryffindor.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree as well.
I would agree that these were people who wanted social and economic equality.
Yep.
But they were led by somebody who was insane.
Yeah, it's the message got unfortunately very, very warped, but the cult itself, the basis on which it was founded, the principles to it, like the 95% of its actions were Gryffindor in nature.
Yeah. It's so upsetting.
What do we have next?
Let's end it with the Branch Dividians.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go to the Branch Dividians, which I believe you, Michael, said that you learned about or know a lot about.
I know a fair amount about. This is definitely one of the more explosive interactions with cults down in Waco, Texas, because it literally had a standoff between, I believe, Texas State Police.
Yeah, the ATF,
and the Davidians themselves, who had armed themselves because they thought that Revelations was coming.
Yeah.
And David Koresh is one hell of a preacher.
My God. Yeah.
Who really, like, he was known for 16-hour sermons where people were not allowed sleep.
Yeah. I didn't grow up in a religious household at all. And if anything, I'm Jewish culturally. So I've never really seen a preacher go at it, but I can only imagine he would be like a Southern lawyer, that's about to wow a jury with just lies because of how much conviction and how compelling this man could be when they get up and like clap.
With a little bit more of like a ringmaster of the
I've never been to
circus.
church.
There's a lot of theatricality and spectacle, especially when in the Protestant ones, like there are so many different denominations of Protestant Christianity, but there has to be from like your religious leaders, like a sense of theatricality, especially ones who aren't puritanical and like very much about like it's just all about the text. A lot of it is about like that's why we have these fucking giant mega churches now. Is you have to be like, what's gonna get these asses in the seats?
Yeah,
and I would imagine that his was probably closer to that. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no. I think you're right. The learning curve that I always experience when it comes to things like the Branch Dividians is that I don't know too much about the Seventh-day Adventists, and because this all came with like the Branch Davidians like originated as like a schism of the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, which started in like 1930 is when their movement was, and then this all happened 25 years later in 1955 with like the death of the Shepherd Rod founder, the Victor Hutef. So this was almost I like when I think about this, it's almost like the schism of Islam, of like who was going to take over after this man died and where are we going to go?
There was a power vacuum that was created, unfortunately.
Exactly.
And it resulted in a lot of people having different beliefs as to what direction and who should be leading. Yeah. So the leader of the Church of the Seventh-day Adventists, Victor Hutef, died. And what he believed in was the second coming of Jesus Christ. And so we get doomsday, that there's going to be an apocalypse that involves defeating the evil armies of Babylon. Right.
Yeah, like one of the only like major distinctions between a Seventh-day Adventist and another kind of Christian is just the day of Sabbath, which day is observed.
Whoa.
Yeah. A lot of Christians have their Sabbaths on Sunday. Adventists have theirs on the Jewish Sabbath Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like like one of the only major differences.
There was
Here we
actually
go.
a very crazy thing that I just encountered when I was driving back from Yosemite with my friends. We saw a sign.
You said friends like they definitely weren't there.
They were, I promise. When we were driving back from Yosemite, we passed by a sign that said the Sabbath is on Saturday, and then it was changed by the Antichrist or something like that.
Whoa.
And we were like,
Whoa,
Hell yeah.
initially we thought that this was a slight on like an anti-Semitic billboard, and
Yeah.
then we're like, oh no, we did some research, and it was this like, because they are apparently very hardcore as far as
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
belief.
No, they're very much more like, we're going to deviate as little from Judaism as possible because a lot of y'all are going hog wild on it.
Yeah.
And so what happens more
So-
with this this particular sect?
So what happens here? So Victor Hutef dies, and he had a wife who was like the prophetess of the Branch Dividians, who was Lois Roden or Rodden. I apologize that I do not know how her name is pronounced, but it's Lois. And she was having an affair with the previously mentioned David Koresh for like years. And so he's been having this affair with the prophetess of the Branch Davidians, and he rises to power with that. With that, she respects him. She puts him as kind of this leader vocally and philosophically of the movement of the Branch Davidians, and then he just keeps going. So he's given this platform because she trusts him, and then her husband dies, and now they're together. They're a thing that's together, and he creates the Waco compound in 1981, and that's when like things go crazy, which is because he believed that they needed a hub.
Yeah.
They needed a place for everyone to congregate, and they needed a place for him to stand on a soapbox and preach about this apocalypse.
Right. And this is simply more than we need a place to congregate, because that's just a church. But a place to congregate and live and ensure that we are not deviating in any waking hour from the writings of Scripture.
Yeah.
And like,
This is Cult 101.
to my understanding, he also kind of had like everyone else watchdogging one another.
Yes.
More so than I think other cults, where it was a little less stringent. This was like
This was the buddy system taken to a very dark place.
and
Yeah.
there was a lot of paranoia
Mhm.
running everything, because
Yeah.
he was also talking about how they were at war.
Yeah.
That
No,
was like
and-
the big angle.
It was such a sectarian sort of approach, and such a paranoid one. I feel like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, at the time that the siege happened,
Yeah.
he had even told them to stop thinking themselves as Branch Davidians, and he was like telling his followers, like, you're like the followers of the seventh seal.
Yeah.
He kept making it so people felt less and less and less like they could trust the other people around them.
They
Yeah.
were being told that they were warriors.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He himself definitely had a Messiah complex. His birth name was Vernon. He changed his name to David after King David in the Bible.
Naturally.
Wow. Here we go. So here we're at the Waco compound, and we're doing the Cult 101 stuff. We're putting people in a confined space. They're getting paranoid. There's a lot of mass hysteria happening. And then here's where the like militarized police get involved, because we have weapons and we have drugs. So there was the big thing about David Koresh is that he knew a bunch of drug dealers, and high drug dealers. We're not talking like Brad down the street who can give you weed for walking his dog. We've all been there. But we're talking black market sellers who are importing from Mexico, drugs from Mexico into Texas type thing. So the ATF gets involved. The government already wanted to get involved because there are a bunch of people being kept in a compound in Waco. So it already
Including
is
children,
suspicious.
right?
Yes, there are children there. So it's already suspicious for a number of reasons as to what's happening here. And now they're being told that there are weapons, which isn't we're in 1981 Texas, there are weapons.
Yeah.
People are allowed to carry, they're huge supporters of the Second Amendment. But we have machine guns.
Yeah,
So that was the
it's-
issue. So we don't have regular pistols or shotguns. We have machine guns, and we don't know why.
Yeah, and remember, this is 93, so
And
we're
large
post.
volumes of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So
Yeah.
this is 93,
We're-
so we're post Jonestown.
Yeah.
So there's definitely going to be that sort of like
Yeah.
we don't want this to happen again.
Yeah, exactly. And people are getting worried. And then here comes with this like the standoff, which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
So the ATF shows up looking, and they from a tip, like this wasn't the odd thing is that I'm always on the side of like, get the police out of there, like 100%. But they had every reason, because kids and families are being held in a place by gunpoint,
Mm-hmm.
is what they saw from far away. You zoom out and that's exactly what it looks like.
Right.
And no one's willing to stand down. And then, and that's what happens at the standoff in Waco in 93, which is like horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
How did that resolve again?
Badly.
Resolve is a fun word to use.
Oh no!
Yeah,
Okay,
It's a
this is one that I
situation-
don't know as much about.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tiffany.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of gunfire, a lot of death on both sides, and I believe they burned the compound down.
They did burn the compound
with
down.
Children locked inside.
Yeah.
Jesus
One of
So
the rooms.
Christ.
76 people died, including David Koresh, and it was a 51-day siege.
Yeah,
Think about how over a month.
this was an insane ordeal, which I believe was
It's nearly
kicked
2
off
months.
by, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
the police who initially investigated it was like not meant to turn into this.
Yeah,
like
not
it
at
was.
all.
It was very much meant to like, hey guys, we just would like to see the guns,
Yeah.
or like, and we'll take those and like everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And David Koresh used that moment to mobilize and be like, they're coming for us.
This is
Yeah.
it. This is doomsday.
And we have to stand our ground. So
and they're the war. They're Babylon.
So
like,
4 ATF agents were killed, 16 were wounded, and then 6 people were killed on February 28th by gunfire, and then 76 were killed just a few months later in April, and that was from the burning down of the compound, which, by the way, we still don't know how. Like, the origin of the fire is still wildly disputed.
Really?
Yeah, they don't
Mhm.
name it in a lot of places. They say that that 2,000 sect members themselves on the outskirts of the compound set it on fire themselves, which might be a cover up, but I don't. There's no evidence that the ATF had any reason to burn down a compound, nor have they ever done that previously. So I don't
Right.
want to blame them in this
the
situation.
argument there could have been like, we thought that we could smoke them out, but
Yeah.
that
Still doesn't. That's not sound logic, and I don't think they do
No.
it. Yeah.
Because it's also one of the worst ways for a human to die is to be trapped in a
Yeah,
brain.
and especially knowing that there were children in the compound, I think they would
yeah.
Yeah.
like exercise extreme
And to
caution.
be completely shitty, that they were mostly white children, I imagine.
Mhm.
It's definitely not going to be something that they're going to be trying to do, because if proof does get out that they murdered white
Yeah.
children in America,
Yeah.
that's going to be the thing that actually causes shit to happen to
Yeah.
them.
There,
So
yeah.
I would say that the conspiracy doesn't sound like it would hold a lot of water for me.
No, there was an initial plan to gas him out using tear gas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Pump
sounds
tear
more
gas in
believable.
there. Didn't work, nor was it fully like put through. Like they didn't go through with a lot of that. Yeah, so there were 3 fires that broke out in April at around noon, and there was no getting rid of these fires. And they didn't. The crazy thing is that the ATF did not think there were that many people trapped in the compound. They weren't told, and the hundreds of people that were outside of the compound wouldn't give them a head count, which is the crazy thing. So it
That's
looks like they were
wild.
running around, and this was unprecedented. They also had no idea what they were doing. So you've got these FBI agents running around just screaming like, how many people are in the building, and no one giving them answers, purposely not giving them answers, which is crazy. And they thought, I mean, in interviews afterward, they thought that there were about 10 to 20 people in there, but there were 76, including the leader.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. And then there's this odd martyr thing that came about because when a man decides, unlike a Charlie Manson who let other people do these murders for him,
Mhm.
there was this martyr complex with David Koresh because he went down with the ship. He was the captain that went down with his own ship.
Yeah, so whatever fucked up philosophy that he was following, you can tell it sounds like he at least believed his own bullshit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I won't go down through the granular. What's nice is even like a Wikipedia page gives an hour by hour recount on the day in April that this happened, what happened each like 30 minutes until like the whole thing exploded.
That's
And it
the-
was an explosion.
That's the creepy thing about living in like when things like happen today, or even as far back as like 93.
Right, that we
it's
have
like
minute to minute.
like
Yeah.
we're
recountings.
like by 93 we're starting to become more and more a 24-hour news cycle
Mhm.
Yeah.
industry that the internet of course created a monster out of.
yeah.
But by 93 we're in it where people in any part of the globe can essentially know what's happening.
Which
Yeah.
is great from a historical standpoint, so potentially things can be walked back. But in the cases of disasters, it's rough.
Yeah. And we
It's-
have we have some like very big problems with the US Department of Justice here, opening fire, killing like 5 children under the age of 14 just out of being terrified and out of
Of course they had that excuse that they didn't know that there were that many children or any children there, but it's
Yeah.
still so fucked up.
It's
that you
really
would-
fucked up. The
you would
military
open
fucked
fire.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
The military absolutely fucked up. But and this is like a strange stance for me to take. All of it comes down to David Koresh. Like all it does. Like a lot of it comes down to a man not willing to stand down and to just point guns at the police with his own people. Apparently, there are many reports of his own people asking to leave.
Oh, yeah,
Multiple
yeah.
times. Like, we need to get out. We're on the side of the military and begging for the military to help them.
Right. And there is a theory that it was David Koresh himself who started the fires
Yeah.
to
No, there's absolutely that theory.
ensure that there would be no survivors and he would be martyred.
Yeah.
And like that larger message would be sent, which is a terrifying one.
Yeah.
I want to say that this is a Slytherin only because of the by any means necessary approach to which this escalated. I don't know. It's either a Gryffindor or a Slytherin for sure in my mind. Only because of like the martyr
Yeah.
stuff.
What would be your argument for Gryffindor?
The Gryffindor part in that he, that whole thing of being martyred made it very much that it wasn't necessarily going to be like not entirely seen as a selfish act. Like
Mhm.
whatever, like I said, whatever bullshit he was selling, he was also buying.
Oh, so had he escaped, but everybody else had died, that would have been like a Slytherin.
That would have been different.
That
Like,
would have
yeah.
been.
I don't know. It's just really hard to know. Like, was he trying to like have control of all of these people, just like a complete control? In which case, that's Slytherin, or was he very much like in the true sense, I am the shepherd of this flock that Christian leaders are trained to have that mindset
Mhm.
that like that everybody around me is equally important, but I'm the person who's just going to help them go in the right direction.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think in the fact, gosh, it's really tough because as soon as you bring the guns in and the drugs in, it really muddies the water.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And so there's the part of me that feels that the guns were very much, I'm of two minds. The guns are both we're doing things that are illegal, so like people are going to be coming at our door and we need to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
But then that also could be going from the religious standpoint on what they actually believed, at which point the guns are justified. So you need to understand, what is the justification for the guns? Is it religious, or is it like more drug defensive, like what we're doing is culty?
Paranoia. Yeah. Ooh.
I would say
If it's the paranoia one, I feel it's Slytherin, and it's just like all these fail safes are being set up that are ultimately going to end shittily.
yeah.
I would say a Gryffindor would not have forced people to stay trapped inside once the fires broke out.
Yeah.
I feel like that sort of like if we have to cleanse ourselves through fire, like so be it sort of attitude, or even if it was just like in the moment,
If everyone
I have to keep control.
If everyone within the cult was on the same page of we're going down with the ship, then
Yeah.
it probably would have been a Gryffindor. But the fact that we have reports that they were trying to get out
Absolutely.
makes the cult itself a little bit more divided. So like the basic message might be a Slytherin.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like it's just one of those things where this one's walking the tightrope in between the two.
Yeah.
But I'd probably skew more towards Slytherin.
I err on the side of Slytherin with this.
And ending on that dark note, I'd love to thank Tiffany Katz for coming in to
thank you
introduce
for
all these
providing us
cults.
maybe the most fucked up episode we've done so far.
Hell yeah. I'm here to shake things up.
Where can we find more of you on the internets?
Oh my goodness. If you Google me, what comes up is a famous photographer in Florida. So don't find her. She's ruining my life. But no, at Tiffany Katz would be my Twitter.
That's
if
a
you
very
wanna
straightforward
come
one.
to the Pack Theater and see me in something or Second City, just follow me on social media and I'll be at either of those places
What
doing
show
something.
do you do at PAC?
We do a show with my improv team Brigadoon, who are wonderful people, and it is called Progress Now, and it is an improvised keynote that goes through a fake product, but mostly sees the behind the scenes lives of people who would even participate in a keynote to begin with.
Is that a monthly show or?
Yes, it is the third Thursday of every month. You can come see us. Sometimes we're after Big Yellow Taxi, who are wonderful, and I think we're switching it up soon, but it'll still be on the third Thursday.
Yeah. In general, if you want to join a cult, just come to the PAC Theater.
Yeah. Huge cult.
That one I won't make you bleep.
If you'd like to be following,
It's a good cult.
If you'd like to be following more from Reed Brice, you can follow them at That Dang Dingus. You can follow me at Belated Media. You also are more than encouraged to leave us a review on iTunes or Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, because we appreciate those sorts of reviews.
If there's something that you really want to have sorted, if you are an expert in something, feel free to contact us. We'll try to make an interview work, especially if you're in the Los Angeles area. Or if there's just a topic that you're like, hey, talk about it. Let us know. We really want to know what you guys want to hear more about.
Yep. So you will hear us on another episode of The Sorting Hat. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
That one ran long.